Hi, I'm Douglas Vogt from the Dihole Foundation. I'm sorry it took so long to get this video out. The two subjects I'm covering in this is whether the crater they found in northwestern Greenland was the one that caused the mass extinctions in the last Clovis period, or roughly 12,000 years ago. Believe it or not, they're trying to blame a crater on what happened 12,000 years ago. You'll find out what the real age of this thing is now shortly. The other one is government interference with carbon-14 dating. And I was kind of disturbed by it, and when I found it or discovered it, I decided to research it more and figure out why they did what they did, and was it because of plain old stupidity or more nefarious reasons, and unfortunately it was the latter. So that's what I'm going to be covering, some of the stuff that's in Chapter 8 in this book, and a lot of new stuff also. I'll explain what the Clovis period is, what they call. They found civilization or artifacts from man that was preceded the last ice age. And they call it the Clovis period, and they try to date it at 12,900 years ago. But of course, it probably was many thousands of years before the last nova. What they're trying to do is saying, okay, this thing happened then. The other part, the Younger Dryas cooling period is, like I explained, they know there was an ice age after the Clovis period ended. They had a big ice age. We had it till 11,000 years ago. So they call it the Younger Dryas period. You'll sometimes see it as YD, YDB, Younger Dryas boundary, so long as you understand. Okay, this is the journal article. I always put the journal article here. Now, all the journal articles I have here, you'll be able to, if you want to, write to me at info@diholefoundation.com, and I'll send you a copy of it. Yeah, it's a PDF, and let you go enjoy it. If you doubt me of what I found or what their interpretation is, you'll understand the minute you read it, I'm right. Okay, so these are quotes right from their journal article. We report the discovery of a large impact crater beneath Hiawatha Glacier in northwestern Greenland. Geochemical analysis of this sediment indicates that the impactor, in other words, the crater made by a meteor or asteroid, they call it impactor, was a fractionated iron asteroid. Something like this: iron and nickel, and titanium and iridium, which must have been more than a kilometer wide to produce the identified crater. The age of this impactor crater is presently unknown, but from our geological and geophysical evidence, we conclude that it is unlikely to predate the Pleistocene inception 2.5 million years ago. I've also seen 1.8 million years. It's just estimates anyway. Greenland sheet. Now, you're going to find out it's a lot older than this, and I'm surprised the geologists who were involved in this thing, mostly from the Scandinavian countries in Europe, couldn't figure this one out. I mean, I was kind of surprised. Sorry for the low resolution pictures. This is what I'm stuck with. The crater is 31.1 kilometers or 19 miles in diameter. It covers about 3,000 feet of ice is covering it, so they can't really get a sample of it. The rim of the floor to depth is 1,040 feet. Quote, the northern Greenland ice sheet, the youngest of which is 38,000 years old, no ejecta layer that might be associated with the Hiawatha impact crater has yet been identified in either Greenland rocks or ice records. Of course, they can't get to it, it's under ice. Impact craters on Earth are often dated using radiometric decay systems, but so far no samples suitable for an absolute age determination have been discovered from the Hiawatha impact crater. Now, this is the outline of the crater. Now, what the U.S. Air Force did is they used ground penetrating radar and ran a whole bunch of runs across the thing and also over here too. Two winding subglacial channels up to 500 meters, 1,625 feet deep, and it's like a canyon, you know, it's a canyon. Kilometers wide, 5 kilometers or 3.1 miles wide, intersects the southeast flank of the circular structure. Here's your crater outline, and I'm sure it's a crater. This is a river valley, and this goes for a long distance, at least 30, 40 miles. This is about 20 miles. And it goes into here. Okay, so let me continue. A large breach, okay, southern channel, and then splits over a large breach in the structure's rim over here. So it went over the rim, the water eroded the rim of the crater and filled this thing up like a lake. Upon entering the main depression, these channels do not have a recognizable topographic expression within the structure. Of course not. It's under 3,000 feet of ice. They can't tell it. Created a lake. Everything in brackets is my quotations, my additions. On the downstream side of the structure, that's over here, there is a second smaller breach in the northwestern portion of the structure's rim here. Now, remember they think this thing is Pleistocene? The Pleistocene period is known for repeated ice ages. Now, Wikipedia and a few others say that Greenland was covered with ice for the last at least 18 million years. That's way beyond and older than 2.8 or 2.5 million years, they say. And this is why. When was the last time that Greenland had no ice on it, that a river in a huge valley would form? 20, 30 million years ago? Your guess is as good as mine or anybody else's. Anyway, the river existed first, and then this thing crashed into it. I'm glad it hit the river. The river, you're not going to stop the river. So it means there was still no ice here when this thing landed. It wore away this part of the rim, filled this thing up as a lake, and then when it filled it up, then it overflowed over here, down, and you can see it went, continue, and made it, this is an alluvial plain made by this river. This is what the U.S. Air Force did, the ground penetrating radar. Here's your lake bottom down here, and here is probably lake debris, and all this is the ice. Assuming that the Hiawatha impactor was iron with a density of 8,000 kilograms meter and its impact velocity was 20 kilometers a second or 12.4 miles per second, the required impactor diameter was 4,900 feet. The impact would initially produce a bowl-shaped cavity 20 kilometers or 12.4 miles in diameter and 7 kilometers or 4.3 miles deep, which would quickly collapse within 1 minute to form a complex crater more than 20 miles in diameter and 2,600 feet deep with a central uplift. Here's your uplift here. There's the top of the ice field there. Here's another view of the same thing. There's debris, probably from the lake. The ground roll table, this is probably where the original bottom of this thing was, right here. Anyway, so here they're trying to say this thing is 2.5 million years. The articles you see after this, they're trying to pin the Clovis extinctions on that crater. Now, remember the article that I mentioned in the previous video regarding Luis Alvarez saying it's a meteor that created the extinctions at the KT boundary. So all the scientists after that are all trying to find craters that they can pin on some extinction during this long period of time. They never think in terms of the sun, though. God forbid. Evidence for an extraterrestrial impact 12,900 years ago that contributed to the megafauna extinction and the Younger Dryas cooling. This date's wrong, and you're going to find out why. In fact, the date this article in 2007 chose was from a dating from Taylor and Haynes in 1996 Antiquities magazine, Antiquities Journal out of Oxford, England. Antiquities, not a geology journal, Antiquities. Keep that in mind. That's important why the archaeologists want to make this thing look older than it really is. The carbon-rich black layer dated to 12.9 thousand and has been previously identified at 50 Clovis sites across North America and appears contemporaneous with the abrupt onset of the Younger Dryas cooling naturally. Sun novas, you have evaporation, then you have condensation, snow, then ice, and you have an ice age for 600, 700, maybe 800 years. That's the cooling. That's the mechanism. This in situ bones of extinct Pleistocene megafauna, along with Clovis tools assemblage, occur below this black layer. This is the layer right here, but not within or above it. They all became extinct right here. About 57 different large mammals in North America. The authors also took their dating from Hayes, correlated the base of the black mat with the onset of YD cooling dating to 12.9 thousand years and the GISP2 ice cores, Greenland. Therefore, we have adopted a calendar age of 12.9 plus or minus 1.1 thousand years for the YD event. Now, that's quotes from the journal, this whole thing was. This is probably from Antarctica, but this is what it would look like. You see a black thing here. This is the glass beads and stuff like that from the last nova. This is what they're looking for. They make certain assumptions of how many years it takes to get this ice down there. Of course, they don't know about the nova. If they did, they'd realize you have, it's not a uniform collection of ice and snow. Okay, this kind of dating uses a ratio between oxygen 18 isotope to oxygen 16. The problem with this kind of dating is that as the temperature gets colder, the O18 drops down to more than 5%. Actually, you see a graph shortly, it's a lot more than 5%. If you only rely on 18 dating for ice cores, you're going to get older dates than actual. Carbon-14 is a much better method. Now, this is what happens. Since O18 is heavier than O16, what happens is it falls in the lower latitudes, the equator and up there. By the time it gets here, you have less oxygen 18. This is a graph which shows temperature, 0 and below freezing. You can see it drops off dramatically. So if they're relying on this ratio, and it's not going to work, it's not going to be that accurate. And it's also going to look older than it really is. That's one dating issue. At the site suited, the independent radiocarbon and optical stimulation luminescence dates that tend to cluster near 13,000 were used to establish the age of YBD. For example, I said YDB. For example, the N Clovis stratum, YDB, is well dated at Murray Springs, Arizona. 8 days are averaged. There's a carbon-14 dating, 10,890, which would be close to the end of the Ice Age. Or calendar year, 12,000.92 K. I did it in red for a second, I'll tell you. The nearby Leaner site, 12 dates averaging 10,940 carbon-14 dating. They wind up revising it to 12.93. I have read thousands of journal articles. Started peering on about 1900s, 1990 something, because I already had enough evidence. First time I ever saw this. Why are they adjusting carbon-14 dating to an alleged calendar date of 12,920. It's like they're trying to fit something. Very suspicious. That's why it took me longer to get this video out. I was going to find out what the hell's going on here. By the way, once you find out what I show you, you're going to get mad as hell. You really will. Some bay dates, Atlantic Coast Plain, that's really what they're referring to, are reported to be 38,000 years older than the proposed date for the YD. In other words, it's close to 36,000 within 3 cycles back. Hey, they found one 3 cycles back. Some people have asked me, well, is there evidence of other polar reversals closer to the last one? Here's one, there's others also. We propose that the YD event resulted from multiple ET extraterrestrial airbursts. An airburst had to have been from a comet. The asteroid, or rocky stone thing, has no volatiles in it. This iron nickel meteor definitely does not. It's not going to blow up. Only a comet, which is I showed you in the previous video, is made up of mostly water and organic material. So there's your volatiles. What happened when this thing comes into the atmosphere? The whole surrounding part of this thing was a big dust ball, heats up, probably turns to glass. The heat converts into the center. The water boils, turns to steam, and blows apart. That's what happened at Tunguska. In fact, when they went to Tunguska and they got the samples, what did they find? The same glass beads that we found on the moon, because it's the same stuff. We propose the YD event, effect of this ET event and associated biomass burning led to abrupt CD cooling, contributing to the late Pleistocene megafaunal extinction, prompted human culture changes, and led to immediate decline in some post-Clovis human population. Probably wiped them out. Where I told you, on the side of the Earth that was facing the sun for 8 hours straight, everything cooked. Anything on top of the ground burned. It had to have. When this dust shell hits us 17, 18 hours later, it's got to be pretty hot, and it probably also burned anything in sight. Hence, this is what you'll see later in some of the later articles that winds up going to this biomass burning stuff. They're trying to figure it out in the worst way. What's interesting, they never talk about the sun, which is, to me, almost hilarious or gross stupidity. Causes for extinctions, YD cooling, and termination of Clovis cultures have long been controversial. Yep. Clovis age sites in North America are overlain by a thin, discrete layer of varying peak abundance of magnetic grains with iridium, same stuff on the moon. This is all the same stuff on the moon. Magnetic microspheres, charcoal, soot, carbon sphericals, glass-like carbon containing nanodiamonds. This is from shock things. Well, folks, if you have a dust shell coming from the sun at 1,550 miles per second, that's the shock wave you're looking at. We can't generate a shock wave like that. Only the sun can do it. That's what creates the microdiamonds from carbon. Fullerness, that's carbon tubes with helium, ET helium. In the sunspots, we see the spectral lines of iron and helium. Now you know where the helium came from. And they captured it. The helium winds up in these carbon sphericals and these tubes. With ET helium, all of which are evidence from an ET impact associated biomass burning at 12,900. Wasn't it? It was 12,000 years ago. We propose that one or more large, low-density ET objects exploded over northern North America, partially destabilizing. Forget this ice sheet crap. This is nonsense. Pure, unadulterated nonsense. If you got an ice field that was around for about 1,000 years, Seattle was 4,000 feet thick. In Iceland, where Iceland meets with Canada, they think it was like 10,000 feet thick. And the ocean level was 300 to 400 feet down. What evaporated all that water? worldwide. Only the sun can do that. Not some exploding meteor or comet or anything like that. They can't do it. They can't explain it. Each of the 10 Clovis age sites display a YDB layer, averaging thickness of 3 centimeters, about 1 inch thick, but I've seen varied up to a much thicker than that. That contains a diversity of markers, magnetic microsphericals, you'll actually see some, I'll show you, and grains, charcoal, soot, iridium, nickel, carbon sphericals, glass-like carbon, nanodiamonds, and fullness, carbon tubes and sphericals, what I mentioned before. The IR, iridium, levels are above background in both bulk, sediment, and magnetic fractions at up to 114 parts per billion. No IR was detected above or below. The iridium is the same stuff they found on the moon, on the comet, and the KT boundary, remember? Luis Alvarez was looking at the iridium. And here's some of the findings. This is the locations: Michigan, Arizona, Minnesota, Alberta, Canada, South Carolina, Belgium, Canada, California, etc. Here's the iridium, 24 parts per billion. Remember, the average is 0.02 parts per billion. 24, 51 to 117. And 15. This is, now notice it's not consistent. It's not going to be. You can't assume this dust shell, when it hits us, is going to be uniform and homogeneous. It's not. We know that from what we found on the moon, from the different samples from everybody from Apollo 11 to 17. They were always a little bit different, up, down, and it's the way it is. You can't assume it's uniform. Here's some of the glass beads they found, or microtectites. And they have the chemicals here. Here's the iridium one here. This is the good one, because they can't explain iridium. That's not coming from volcanoes or anything like that. Iridium here is the green lines here. Look, a big spike right across there. This is different locations around the United States. So same stuff here. Magnetic microsphericals and grains. High concentrations of microsphericals glass are accepted as evidence for at least 11 older ET impact events. Alternately, microsphericals are sometimes associated with volcanism, but when YDB microsphericals were analyzed by electron microscope and X-ray fluorescence and compared with known cosmic and volcanic microsphericals, they appear to be non-volcanic in nature. Analysis suggests ET origin, but because of high titanium concentration, the microsphericals differ from typical meteoric ones. The stuff on the moon had a lot of titanium in it. So that's not really true. Maybe they just don't know. A lot of these scientists are maybe in their 30s, late 20s, 30s, maybe early 40s. There's no guarantee their textbooks had the stuff from the moon. Probably didn't. And they probably didn't bother reading journals from Nature and Science and others back in the 60s and early 70s. There's no guarantee. Probably they didn't. Because if they did, they would have also done the experiment to see fission tracks and isotopes of iron and selenium and titanium and the others, and aluminum, that would have told them immediately this thing came from the sun. But they didn't do that. Throughout all of these journals, they don't do those two tests. Now, I think I mentioned in the last video, the reason why the scientists did it when the stuff came back from the moon is they must have been told, you look for stuff that came from the sun or radioactive material. Ice core evidence. These are the subsections that are in that journal. You want it, you can read all of them. Large increases in iridium and plutonium occurred during the Younger Dryas as recorded in the GRIP, Greenland ice cores by such and such, who attributed these increases to increased cosmic input. Well, cosmic, yes, from the sun. Evidence of biomass burning, there's the reference, reported large ammonium and nitrate spikes in the Greenland GIS-P2 ice cores at the onset of the young Dryas. These, was the very beginning of the Ice Age. Well, you know why. These GIS-P2 data are consistent with strong geochemical evidence in the GRIP ice cores for massive biomass burning at the YD onset. Onset, the beginning of the Ice Age, sun novas, dust shell hits us. We're talking a lot of burning. That's why the CO2 increase in the ice cores found all over the world is because of the burning. Although the YD onset was one of the most robust intervals of biomass burning inferred from the Greenland ice cores, although the source of this burning signal must have been far more remote than sources today. The reason why it's such they got good data is because it was so recent. As it goes further back in time, the carbon gets associated with other things. Radioactive elements. Some megafauna bones in the YDB are highly radioactive. I didn't know that. Relative to other stratigraphic intervals, as occupied for some bones at the KT boundary. In addition, high concentrations of uranium and thorium were found in the YDB sediment in 6 of 6 Clovis age sites, that means all the sites, analyzed, and in 4 of 4 bays with a paleosol, it means fossil soils, soil. I'll get my mouth working soon. Just as were found in the impact layers at Chesapeake Bay, that's on the east coast of the United States, and KT boundary. Even so, current data suggests that this impactor, this meteor or whatever, was very different from well-studied ironstone or chondritic impactors, asteroids with rocky centers. Okay, in other words, when the dust shell hit us, which it hit our side of the Earth last time, it's not going to look like meteor or asteroids. This is the glass beads they found in Chesapeake Bay. Gee, here's the glass beads and stuff found on the moon. It's the same stuff, same color, same chemical composition. That really gives it away. So, but they don't look at the sun, which is, scratch my head. Why? I guess if they say sun, they don't get the grant money from the National Science Foundation. Next article. I started investigating why they're recalculating the carbon-14 dating. I was really pissed off about that when I saw it. I had to figure out the answer. I unfortunately found the answer. This came actually out of Europe. Most of these scientists are from Europe. A couple of them, they use University of Washington for dating, and one else, I think it was Harvard for dating. How they're involved, I don't know. This was a study done by 8 institutions from France, Germany, Northern Ireland, then the Netherlands, and 3 from the US. This one from Northern Ireland was one involved in doctoring data regarding the carbon-14 stuff, blaming man for global warming. The global warming crowd is most of these people. They dated tree ring uranium-thorium dating corals and marine sediment. The carbon-14 age, Cal age information produced by many laboratories is converted to carbon-14 profiles and calibration curves for the atmosphere as well as for the ocean. We discuss offsets in measured carbon-14 ages and the errors within regional carbon-14 age differences. Tree coral, carbon-14 age comparisons. Now let me explain what's going on with this mouthful. I first located the article, where is it here? Here it is. They referenced a 2000, it's called INT-CAL 04. It means it was done in 2004. They further refined it. But the paper's pretty thin, and never said why they did it. Then they also refer to a 2009 one called INTCAL 09. Same thing, slight modifications from the previous ones. Here's the articles. But they don't say the philosophy why. They just got more people involved in this thing, a lot of archaeologists. So they finally, one place mentioned INTCAL 98. And that's where they explain what they were doing. Talk about shenanigans. They made at least 3 major errors in logic here. And you'll see it immediately. Why they didn't? Well, I think I know why. You're not going to like it. But I'm going to go through it. Again, if you doubt me, contact me. I'll send you all 3, and you can see it for yourself. Read it for yourself. You got to educate yourself. Okay. These are all quotes from that 98 paper. The slightly lower carbon-14 activity per gram of carbon of the mixed layer relative to the atmosphere results in an offset between atmospheric and ocean carbon-14 ages samples with identical cal age. They're calibrating age. They're trying to unite dating of coral in the ocean with tree rings found in Europe and some in the United States. The reservoir correction, 509 means plus and minus over 1,000 or 2,000 years. They got as much as that of a correction of carbon-14. Over 12,000 to 10,000 cal before present. Before present means 1950. Was fixed by comparing early Holocene, that's the current period after the Pleistocene, the current period we're in, tree ring and coral 14 activities of contemporaneous samples. A floating marine verve, a pair of thin layers of clay and silt, that's what this means. Chronology, however, was used to strengthen the coral information from the 14,500 to 11,700 cal BP interval. To fix absolute time, the younger varvi, carbon-14 ages, were matched with tree ring carbon-14 ages, normalized on marine sea level. Normalized meaning they did some shenanigans to try to make this carbon-14 match what they think the ocean stuff was. Combining these results with those combined by Belfast, that's the university in Belfast, Northern Ireland, they were involved in the shenanigans with global warming and carbon-14. This is all in 1989 during the Clinton administration and Al Gore, who I love calling Igor. Samples led to a 20-year calibration curve which has until now been used for most age calibrations. Okay, this is the problem with it. The corals are assumed to be ideal closed systems with regard to carbon-14, U2, that's uranium-234, and thorium-234 exchange. I'll explain. Well, this will partially explain it, and I'll go into it. The half-life of carbon-14 is 5,730 years. And we know it's a linear relationship. As you go back in time, you're going to have less carbon-14 as it decays. So it's pretty good and pretty accurate. Half-life of uranium-234 is 246,000 years. The half-life of which it decays to thorium-234, its life is 1 second, 1.05 seconds, kind of short. And the half-life of it decays to become thorium-230 is 75,000 years. So they try to find the ratio between these two in equilibrium, and for this magical reason, they think they can wind up aging this stuff, this coral, comparing it to carbon-14 with a half-life of 5,730 years. Okay, now you can begin to see what difference is here. Now, there's an issue of how much carbon coral get. Now, coral grows in 5 or 10 feet of water, all the way into 50 or 100 feet of water. They need sunlight. There's an animal in there, and the animal, oh, this is the thorium, what they were trying to go by. And this is the standard deviation for thorium dating. These bars represent 5,000 years. Good luck on trying to pinpoint a real accurate date compared to carbon-14. But this is what they relied on. Okay, back to our coral. So we have a column of water. This is algae. This is an algae bloom. This is what algae looks like, little plants. One cell, this is multiple cells. These guys get the carbon first. These are rheolea. These guys eat these ones, and these are also in the entire column of water. And these also acquire and use the CO2 to make their shells, their little glass-like shells. So these animals are going to get, plants and animals are going to get the carbon first before the coral gets it. So here's our problem. Here's a tree. They said they had some trees that were 10,000 years old. Well, here's someone that's supposedly 4,000 years old in North Wales, England. It's a yew. And here's our coral. These are not the same environments of these life forms, and they aren't even the same life forms. This one takes CO2 and carbon, and it makes cells, which actually sap goes through them, and they're made up of more than just carbon. And it's above ground. So it gets the carbon dioxide first. This gets carbon dioxide only after everything else above to there gets to it. But there's an animal in these corals, and the coral, when the animal does it, it takes the CO2, it creates calcium carbonate, which is what the coral is made out of. It's a totally different life, type of life, in two different, totally different environments. Why are they mixing them? You can't mix them. They're totally different. That's what these people have done. And it's done for one reason, to show that the carbon-14 dating is not quite accurate. We have to do something with it, so it's not so obvious. Here's their results. This is when you start getting mad. Carbon-14 dating of, let's say 10,400 to 300. Nah, they say it's 12,000 years old. Here's one at 9,500. Before present, they think it's 11,000 years. Got the picture? Here's another one. This is from their IntCal 13. This is where I estimated 12,000 years deep carbon-14 dating would have been. This line is how they're adjusting it. If you're dealing with this stuff, you can go to this graph, and you can wind up adjusting and find out what the real carbon-14 dating was. If it says cal or current calendar, you know that's exactly what they did. 24,000 roughly here. They think it's, gee, more like 28,000. This one turns out more like 14,000, a 2,000 year difference. Here's roughly 36,000. We're almost at 40,000, like 39,000. So like 2,000 to 3,000 plus year difference, which makes the carbon-14 dating accuracy eliminates it. I mean, you don't see it then. They're doing this for a reason. Now, there's some magic going on between the carbon-14 dating and then all of a sudden they have a number that's different, really wild. So in article, in the paper IntCal 04, they finally said what they did, besides the shenanigans in the first paper. So here you're taking tree ring stuff, data, atmospheric carbon-14 dating. And you know what they're using for the statistical model to make it come out what they want? Random walk model. Now, what's the random walk model? The random walk theory suggests that changes in stock prices have the same distribution and are independent of each other. Therefore, the past movement or trend of a stock price or market cannot be used to predict its future movement. This theory and model is used for stocks and bonds and the price of currency, not on something that you know what it's doing over time. It's going to decay. It's not random at all. They're using a model, a statistical model, to play a game to adjust carbon-14 dating so you don't really know the age of stuff. InCal 09, Marine Radiocarbon Age Calibration Curves, 0 to 50,000 years. And I'm sure people are actually using this, geologists, to try to date their stuff, and they're getting wrong numbers. Here, this is what they have, to give you an idea. This is 12,000 years, carbon-14 dating, 12,000. So there's a variance here. So it's either 13,500, 607, either 13,700 years, or it's 14,000 years. We can cover right off the bat. So it's like 1,800 to 2,000 year difference. They're trying to erase the 12,000 year cycle so you don't see there's a pattern to the destruction. You got it? Here's another one at 24,000 years. So 24,000 is where it is. And it intersects here, right down here to 28,500. Do your math, that's, gee, 4,000 year difference. They really want to erase it, don't they? Or as high as 28,900. Yeah, 28,900. So that's your standard deviation here. But this is all, by the way, these represent everything from coral to carbon-14 dating of tree rings, which is kind of a weird thing to wind up doing. So here's another one of 36,000 years, what about here? Again, they say it's 41,100 to 41,500, 400. Gee, that doesn't sound like 36, doesn't it? That's a pretty big difference. They're trying to erase everything that looks like that 36 or 12,000 year cycle, trying to erase it. Here it is again at 12,000 and 13,009 or 800. Again, about 2,000 year difference. These are from their stuff. This is their comparison between InCal 09 and InCal 04. And the difference is this difference here, where they've adjusted it. But still the same crap. Okay, I'm going to explain what happened, what you just saw. I'll go back. What you just saw. What is this? Who benefited by this? 3 groups. One, the archaeologists. They have their theories that Clovis and other things are older than it really is. I don't know why. Some of it they take the sedimentary evidence, like in the ocean, they're all assuming a layer is deposited at the same rate no matter where it is in the earth. The other is the carbon-14 group that say global warming is due to mankind. So they want to show that carbon-14 is due to mankind, not due to a cycle that runs through time. And of course, government, both European and American governments, as you know, they want to obscure this 12,000 year cycle because they don't want to scare the crap out of all of you. I guess I'm doing it instead, but I'm just telling you the truth. So they had 3 interests of why they wanted to do this. I call it a fraud. At first I thought these people were incredibly dumb and stupid, but no, they're not dumb and stupid. I think they're intelligent people. But remember, he who pays the piper plays the tune. All these guys wouldn't have done a lick of research at all unless some grant money, they received some grant money from government to do it. That's the truth of the state of academia right now. You know, and it's not only because they're looking for they're missing 2 months' salary. It's the administrators in the colleges and university who want to get 40 to 50% of that grant money so they can increase their pensions, their salaries, and their bonuses, whatever. That's what's going on. In accounting, you learn, follow the money trail, and that's the case here. It's the money trail. So, remember, in the 1930s, Nazi government in Germany had no problem getting researchers, professors, doing research on anything they wanted, including racial superiority. That didn't work out too good for them, huh? But they had no problem getting academia to go take the money and give them whatever they wanted, and they just did. That's why you should be mad. Those of you who think government is the great and wonderful thing, no. You don't want government by the bureaucracy and for the bureaucracy, because believe me, they're not your friend, and some of the agencies are definitely our enemy. They only care about themselves and saving their own ass. Estimated temperature in Greenland, guess what is wrong with this chart? One, they got this thing in the wrong place. Here's 12,000 years. Yep, that's true. The temperature will drop down after the nova. First you get a lot of heat, but this is the accumulators of snow and ice. They got it to way, way down. No, that's a total lie. This thing should more look like, this is 10,000 years, so the ice age is over by here. So this would have been more like this, and here, straight up. This is like 0.3 of a meter per year. Seattle had about 19,000 feet of snow to get you 4,000 feet of ice. This will be right through the chart. So anyway, that's really what goes on. But they even show here, the temperature went from minus 30 in Iceland all the way down to Greenland, all the way down to minus 50. I've seen some that's more like 40 and 50 degrees colder. So the graph, this part's correct or on the right track. This is totally wrong. This is bizarre. I mean, just totally bizarre. They never want to explain, okay, you got an ice field that's pretty thick. What evaporated all the ocean water? What did it? They leave that out totally. Next paper, very high temperature impact melt produces as evidence for cosmic airburst and impacts 12,900 years. Again, guess where he got this date? From the previous journal article I showed you, the first one. Discovery of anomalous material in a thin sedimentary layer up to a few centimeters thick and broadly distributed across several continents led Firestone et al., I've seen him on quite a few of these papers, to propose that a cosmic impact occurred 12.9 thousand years ago near or onset of the Younger Dryas cooling episode. The purpose of this paper seems to be to try to prove that the impact crater I showed you in Iceland is the thing that caused this extinction and the ice age. They're trying to find a crater, an impact, anywhere. They don't care where. Could be in your backyard. Scope of the study. The reason why this was a good one, he studied a lot of sphericals, those little glass beads, over a long area, a large area. We investigated YDB markers at 18 dated sites spanning 12,000 kilometers across 7 countries on 3 continents, greatly expanding the extent of the YDB marker field beyond earlier studies. Currently, there are no known limits to the field. They're all over the place. We compared YDB objects with greater than 10,000 volcanic samples, glass, tephra, and sphericals from 205 sites in 4 oceans on 4 continents. These are some of the sphericals. Looks familiar with the same stuff we found on the moon, huh? It is. Sedimentary sphericals are found throughout the global record, geological record rather. The YDB layer at 18 sites display peaks in iron, silicon-rich magnetic sphericals that usually appear as highly reflective black to clear spherical, although 10% display more complex shapes, including teardrops and dumbbells. Same stuff we found on the moon. The dumbbells, because they were spinning so fast, 2 drops that stuck together, spun out and became a dumbbell. Sphericals range from one part of a meters, or known as a 1/10 of a millimeter, to 5.5 millimeters in diameter, means 240 mu meters, medium 40 4/10 of a millimeter. And concentrations range from 5 to 490 sphericals per gram, meaning kilogram rather, 904 blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is what they look like. All the same stuff we found on the moon, same chemical composition, which I'll show you. Here's the magnetite. That's why it's stuck together. It's perfectly round. Remember I told you this in the solar flares, they see the spectral lines of iron? Now you know where the iron came from. And remember, there are those big loops on the moon, on the sun, they're magnetic loops. So guess how the iron got magnetized? From the sun. It looks like all these things are also magnetized. They're all stuck together. This is a good one. This is the lunar glass, green glass. Guess what this thing came from? The atomic bomb test in Trinity in 1945. It's the same green glass. Gee, what formed this? Try about 1 million degrees. That's way more than a volcano, isn't it? Or even an impact crater. 1,000,000+ degrees. Same thing there. The location of the YGB layer is further supported by evidence of 12.9 thousand climate cooling and drying based on the polynomial and macrobiological record that reveal a sudden decline in 60 to 100% in the abundance of charred seed remains of several major groups of food plants. In other words, sun novas, burns everything on the surface of the earth, not much survives. And what does survive starts what we have today. This is another article, evidence for the deposition of 10 million tons of impact sphericals across 4 continents 12,800 years ago. There's your reference. Again, it's really 12,000 years ago. An increasing body of evidence suggests that major cosmic airburst impacts with Earth occurred at the onset of the Younger Dryas episode, triggering abrupt cooling and causing major environmental perturbations that contributed to megafloral extinctions and human cultural changes, called mass extinctions, or all hell broke loose. Other criteria help confirm the identification of a YGB layer, including the stratigraphic distribution of archaeological artifacts found either in the sampling location or in vicinity of 12 sites, including 10 in North America, that contain projectile points and other artifacts from Paleo-American cultures. This is where the archaeologists they wanted this thing to be as old as possible. And they influenced what you saw earlier, this shenanigans with the carbon-14 dating. This is the area that he analyzed. North America, Europe, part of South America, China, India, Australia. It's called the Australian stuff. They sound this. The next video, I'll cover the stuff that was found in Antarctica, as well as the mass extinctions, the creation of new species that they cannot explain. Here's the areas that he wound up studying and getting stuff from. The analysis of 771 YDB objects presented in this paper strongly support a major cosmic impact at 12.8 thousand years ago. This conclusion is substantiated by the following. Sphericals and SLOs, those are silicon round objects, are widespread at 18 sites on 4 continents, display large abundance peaks only at the YD on-site 12,800 years ago, are rarely found above or below the YDB boundary, indicating a single rare event and amount to an estimated 10 million tons of material distributed across 50 million square kilometers of several continents, thus precluding a small localized impact event. He's basically saying It's not a comet, it's not a meteor, it's not an asteroid hitting anything. This is something totally different. I say this, the dust shell hit here and went all over the place. This part of the Earth saw the sun nova. For 8 hours it stood still, and then it started moving the other direction. Dust shell hit us roughly about here. These are the bees that he examined. Very high temperatures. Now I'm going to go through all of these. Basically this, I'll stay out of the way so you can read some of this stuff. He goes through the temperature necessary to create iron and titanium, 1400 degrees, iron oxides, 1550 degrees, iron aluminum, 1700 degrees. Some can go as high as 2000 degrees. Silicon oxide, glass, 2200 degrees. These are temperatures higher than any volcanic stuff or any impacts. Because remember, this is found all over really all over the world. There was a very good study, and that's what was good about it. The maximum YdB magnetic grain concentration in bulk sediments range from 0.4 to 73.6 grams per kilogram. That's a lot. Average 7.2, and in most samples, concentration decreased outside the YdB to this. Concentration of sphericals in YdB layer varied widely from 5 to 4,900 sphericals per kilogram, average 955 kilograms. I mean, that's a lot. YdB objects are not comprised of volcanic or mantle material. He's telling you right here, it's ET, it's outside, it's not volcanic, it's not from the Earth, it got deposited. So anybody tells you volcanic, they know nothing, absolutely nothing. The YdB layers are continuous strata at 18 sites, also do not contain visible tetra or I can't even pronounce it, volcanic material silica, ash. The presence of both increase and decrease gradients of YdB sphericals suggests that there were sufficient high temperatures and flight times for vaporization and condensation to occur. 93 million miles is enough time and enough distance to do this. No plausible process besides a cosmic airburst impact is capable of boiling or vaporizing airborne rock at greater than 2200 degrees centigrade, long enough to produce millimeter-sized sphericals that display compositional gradients. He's telling you right off the bat. This is the dust shell from the sun. If you had any doubts, I've shown you enough in these videos and this. I'm right. Our sun novas, we got two things. One, on the side of the Earth that stands still, gets a chance to get baked by seeing the sun. And then 17 to 18 hours later, it gets the dust shell that also does a good cooking and a dusting. Extraterrestrial impacts before the last ice age. These results show that the incineration of biomass at 1730 to 2600 degrees centigrade can produce glassy sphericals, and we conclude that a significant percentage of YdB aluminum silica rich sphericals could have formed by the impact-related incineration of biomass, but not the high iron sphericals, nor the titanium ones or the iridium ones also. Requisite temperatures of 1730 degrees centigrade above the maximum temperature ever recorded in a wildfire. They did not test for fission tracks or isotopes of the elements. They did. This is a dead issue. This picture I showed earlier where they try to give the idea a comet comes down or meteor comes down and it blows up and this fireball spreads over the whole world and cooks the place. Total lie. It's crap. Several reasons. One, it doesn't have the impact power. It's only localized. Two, the air itself is a resistance to the shock wave that this thing would be. If you doubt me, go in your car, drive 70, 80 miles an hour, put your hand out the window. That's resistance. If this thing goes off and hits, let's say at 700 or 800 miles an hour or 600 miles an hour, what do you think the iron's going to do? When this impact hits the oxygen, the atmosphere, it's like hitting a brick wall. It slows down. It's just like the physicists who during the test at Trinity, the atomic bomb test, thought the whole atmosphere was going to ignite and blow up. It didn't. It created a crater of, I think, 90 meters in diameter, and it was very localized. The shock wave went further, but it dies out because the atmosphere is like a resistance. This is a fiction of Hollywood, and I guess government wants to see this too. They want you to think that a random act is going to do this. They're lying. I can't call it anything else. I can't find another word for it. This is outright lying. Another example. This I found in one of the papers. These are the different periods of time: Jurassic, early middle Jurassic, Triassic, older one. And they're trying to find what this is craters, eruptions, craters, other eruptions. They're trying to find, the geologists, to make their mark in academia, is trying to desperately find craters that match up a period of mass extinction so they can hang their hat on it. That's what they did with the current one in Hiawatha in Greenland. They're desperately trying to pin that one on the last ice age and mass extinctions and stuff like that in North America and the rest of the world. They can't do it. Very plainly, they're not smart enough to do it either. They can't think outside the box. It's amazing. Here's the guy who did it. I mentioned him earlier, and he did it because he got my book. We gave it to him at Berkeley. 2 years later, in June of 1980, he wrote this paper, and nobody's going to challenge his credentials. Won a Nobel Prize in Physics. They didn't challenge him or his son. And everybody was looking for impact craters to be mass extinctions. He did it because he knew I had nailed it. The government knew I had figured it out. And they had to come up with an alternate explanation. The carbon-14 dating, obscuring its accuracy, what you just saw, is the same shenanigans that government is doing because they're deathly scared that you're going to figure it out and find out what I'm showing you and proving you here. Again, I don't want you to ever forget these two things. This is, William Casey was the director of the CIA under the Reagan administration. He takes over. We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false. He's not lying. I went in the paper, in the first video in this series, I showed who wrote it, who brought it to the public, who was at the meeting, who wrote it down, and how it was. This is another one. George Herbert Walker Bush, Mr. One World Government himself, head of the CIA before the Carter administration, from 76 to the end of 77. At the time he said, Sarah, that was a news reporter, if the American people ever found out what we have done, they would chase us down the street and lynch us. This was quoted to Sarah McLennan, White House news reporter, the grande dame of the White House. That's the end of this video. We're a 501c3 nonprofit foundation. The purpose of the foundation is, one, to figure out what side of the earth is going to be facing the sun when it novas next time, and which might happen in 27 years, and how to save your ass. And that's the purpose of the foundation and why I started it over 20 years ago, I think it is. I hope you enjoyed the video. I know you learned something. I hope I didn't go too long.